The departure board flashed one final warning as passengers rushed toward their gates, but one man stood completely still. A young bride in a white wedding dress sat alone on the airport floor, clutching a wilted bouquet and crying so hard she could barely breathe. He looked once at the gate where his flight was making its final boarding call, then back at the stranger whose entire world seemed to be falling apart. Without another thought, he turned away from the airplane, watched the gate close without him, and walked toward the bride. By the time the afternoon sun began shining through the airport windows, he had no idea that missing that flight would cost him a fortune, or that the very next morning, the same woman would walk into his office and change his life forever. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that one selfless decision can completely rewrite a person's future. Colton Hayes had built his life on discipline. At 38, he was the founder of a successful architectural design company known for restoring historic buildings instead of replacing them. While many developers chased profits through demolition, Colton believed every old structure deserved one honest chance to stand again. His co-workers admired his calm leadership, but very few knew how lonely success had become. 8 years earlier, his fiancée had ended their engagement just weeks before their wedding, choosing a life overseas with someone else. Since then, Colton buried himself in work, convinced that buildings were easier to repair than broken hearts. That bright spring afternoon, he was flying to another city to finalize the largest contract his company had ever pursued. Winning the project would secure jobs for dozens of employees and allow the business to expand into new communities. Every minute mattered. As he approached his boarding gate, he noticed people staring toward a quiet corner near the airport windows. A young woman wearing an elegant wedding dress sat on the polished floor. Her carefully styled hair had partly fallen loose, mascara streaked her cheeks, and her bouquet rested forgotten beside her suitcase. Travelers glanced with sympathy before continuing toward their own destinations. No one stopped. Colton couldn't. Something about her heartbreak reminded him too much of the afternoon his own future had collapsed. He slowly walked over and offered her a bottle of water. She accepted it with trembling hands. For several minutes, neither spoke. Sometimes silence creates more comfort than rushed advice. Eventually, the woman introduced herself as Vivian Brooks. That morning had been supposed to become the happiest day of her life. Instead, moments before leaving for the ceremony, she accidentally discovered messages proving her fiancé had secretly maintained another relationship for more than a year. When she confronted him, he admitted he had planned to end the affair after the honeymoon. Those words shattered every dream she had built. Rather than walking into a marriage built on deception, Vivian quietly left the wedding venue wearing the dress she no longer had the strength to change out of. She bought the first available plane ticket simply to escape the memories surrounding her hometown. But once she reached the airport, she realized she wasn't running toward anything. She was only running away. As she finished speaking, the loudspeaker announced the final boarding call for Colton's flight. Passengers hurried past him. He looked toward the gate. Then toward Vivian. Without hesitation, he stayed. Minutes later, the airplane departed without him. His phone immediately filled with concerned messages from coworkers asking why he hadn't boarded. He calmly replied that an unexpected emergency had required him to remain behind. Technically, he wasn't lying. Human hearts deserve to be treated like emergencies too. Colton spent the next several hours helping Vivian contact her parents, who had been desperately searching for her. Although embarrassed and emotionally exhausted, she eventually agreed to speak with them. Instead of anger, her parents responded with overwhelming relief. They admitted they would rather see her heartbroken today than trapped inside an unhappy marriage for decades. Those words became the first small step toward healing. Later that afternoon, Colton helped her arrange transportation back to a family friend's home rather than another flight she wasn't emotionally prepared to take. Before leaving, Vivian thanked him. She admitted that if he hadn't stopped, she honestly didn't know what decision she might have made while overwhelmed by despair. Colton simply smiled. Sometimes the greatest gift one stranger can offer another is the reminder that tomorrow still exists. The following morning, Colton arrived at his office expecting difficult conversations. His missed flight had delayed contract negotiations. Competitors had likely gained an advantage. He accepted whatever consequences might follow. As his assistant organized the day's schedule, she quietly mentioned that a new client wished to meet him personally. Minutes later, the conference room door opened. Standing there was Vivian. This time she wore simple professional clothing instead of a wedding dress. Although her eyes still carried traces of yesterday's pain, determination had begun replacing despair. Colton looked completely surprised. Vivian smiled for the first time since they had met. She explained that after returning to her family friend's house, she remembered something her late grandfather often repeated. Whenever life unexpectedly closed one door, she should never spend so much time mourning it that she failed to notice another opening nearby. Her grandfather had also happened to own one of the oldest textile factories in the region. After his passing, Vivian inherited responsibility for deciding its future. Developers wanted to demolish the historic building and replace it with luxury apartments. She had never felt emotionally prepared to make such an important decision. While researching architectural firms specializing in restoration rather than demolition, she discovered Colton's company. She almost couldn't believe the name. The stranger who sacrificed his own flight to help her happened to be the exact architect she had hoped to hire. Neither considered it coincidence. They considered it grace. The factory represented far more than old bricks. Vivian's grandfather had employed generations of local families. Many retired workers still visited the building simply to remember decades spent inside its walls. She wanted the property transformed into something that honored those memories rather than erased them. Colton accepted the project immediately. Over the following months, they worked together beneath countless sunny afternoons, walking through dusty hallways, studying faded blueprints, and interviewing former employees whose stories gradually shaped every design decision. Instead of constructing another expensive apartment complex, they envisioned a community center featuring local businesses, artisan workshops, educational classrooms, and a museum preserving the factory's history. Every conversation revealed new layers of Vivian's character. She wasn't defined by the wedding that never happened. She was compassionate, intelligent, resilient, and deeply committed to preserving the legacy her grandfather had built. Likewise, Vivian slowly discovered that Colton's quiet kindness extended far beyond one afternoon at an airport. He personally funded scholarships for architecture students who couldn't afford tuition. He restored abandoned homes for veterans at reduced costs. He insisted every restoration project hire local workers whenever possible. Recognition never interested him. Meaning did. Their friendship developed naturally. Neither rushed. Both understood emotional wounds require patience instead of pressure. One afternoon while reviewing renovation plans, they met Eleanor, an elderly woman who had worked inside the factory for nearly 40 years. She walked slowly through empty production rooms, smiling as sunlight streamed across worn wooden floors. She explained that after losing her husband many years earlier, the factory workers became her second family. Those walls had witnessed birthdays, retirements, laughter, grief, and lifelong friendships. Before leaving, Eleanor quietly told Colton and Vivian something they never forgot. Buildings survive because people choose to care for them. Relationships survive exactly the same way. The months passed. The restoration slowly transformed forgotten spaces into vibrant gathering places. Local artists volunteered murals celebrating generations of workers. Retired machinists taught young apprentices traditional craftsmanship. Children attended educational programs where abandoned storage rooms once stood. Hope replaced abandonment. As opening day approached, unexpected financial difficulties threatened to halt the project. Construction costs increased dramatically after hidden structural damage appeared beneath one section of the building. Several investors recommended abandoning the restoration altogether. Colton refused. Vivian refused. Instead of giving up, they organized a daytime community fundraising festival inside the unfinished courtyard. Families arrived carrying homemade food. Musicians performed. Former employees donated treasured photographs documenting decades of factory life. Neighbors contributed whatever they could. Some gave money. Others offered labor. Several local businesses donated materials. By sunset's approach, while daylight still lingered across the courtyard, they had raised enough support to continue construction. Neither Colton nor Vivian could hold back tears. The community hadn't merely saved a building. They had protected shared memories. Several weeks later, the restoration officially opened. Crowds filled every hallway. Children laughed inside learning spaces. Small businesses welcomed their first customers. Former workers proudly guided visitors through historical exhibits displaying photographs from generations past. Near the main entrance stood a simple bronze plaque. It carried no corporate slogan. Only one sentence. Every restored place begins with someone who chose compassion over convenience. Vivian quietly admitted those words described far more than the building. They described the afternoon one stranger missed his airplane. Colton smiled. He confessed something he had never told anyone. Missing that flight initially felt like the worst professional mistake of his career. Now he couldn't imagine boarding it. Not because he expected anything in return. Because helping someone in pain had reminded him of the man he always wanted to remain. Several months later, during another bright afternoon celebration inside the restored courtyard, Vivian invited Colton to walk through the gardens they had created together. Flowers surrounded benches built from reclaimed wood salvaged during renovation. Families filled the pathways. Children played beneath colorful banners celebrating the community's history. Vivian thanked him once more. Not simply for staying with her at the airport. For seeing value in broken things. Broken buildings. Broken dreams. Broken hearts. Colton gently replied that perhaps nothing truly beautiful begins completely unbroken. Sometimes restoration creates greater strength than perfection ever could. That afternoon they decided to stop pretending their growing affection was merely friendship. Neither rushed toward romance. Both walked into it carefully, carrying lessons learned through disappointment, healing, and patience. Their relationship wasn't built because someone rescued someone else. It grew because two wounded people discovered they inspired one another to become stronger. Before we reach the end of this journey, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe one act of kindness from a complete stranger can truly change someone's life forever, or tell us about a moment when compassion unexpectedly altered your own path. Years later, visitors exploring the beautifully restored factory rarely knew how close the building had come to disappearing forever. They admired the vibrant workshops, the laughter-filling classrooms, and the photographs preserving generations of memories. Few realized the entire place existed because one man chose a crying stranger over a departing airplane. Colton and Vivian never described that afternoon as luck. They described it as proof that compassion rarely delays our destiny. Sometimes it becomes the very road leading us there. Their story reminded everyone who crossed those old wooden floors that missed opportunities are not always losses. Occasionally, they are quiet invitations towards something infinitely more meaningful. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind us that whenever we choose kindness over convenience, hope over fear, and compassion over selfishness, we may never know how many lives, including our own, we quietly help restore.